Right, I believe we might now be listening to the Yuri's Revenge soundtrack. I love these soundtracks so much. I listened to so much when I was a kid. You're listening to the MP3s that are ripped directly from the game because, like, this was back in the days of like Napster and old school internet where everything was like homebrew and it was still like what was it like Windows ME, so you had the grey taskbar and things got a little bit colourful a little bit later with XP. But you would download these weird like homebrew applications made by other people on the internet, and they would like extract stuff from the game files, and I used to use them to find where the music was, and then with that I would use like an MP3 converter, and so you'd extract this raw data of the audio that we're listening to right now, and then I would convert them into MP3s. And back then, CDs were still a thing, and I made like little bootleg covers for the soundtracks. Right, I made my own little bootleg soundtrack covers, and it was so good. I loved it. Why you try hard? TV boy says assume equals hacker. Nah, not really. The people who made the programs, they were the hackers, right? They are the people with the coding knowledge and all of that. I was just using a program that they made, to do stuff like that. The only thing that I had there that I can talk about is like I had the initiative to go look for that stuff and search it up. Like there was a whole scene for homebrew Game Boy games. Like people would make their own Game Boy Color games, and you could download ROMs of the actual games. Like so, there was like a piracy scene for getting hold of the Game Boy ROMs, and then there was like a homebrew scene for people who wanted to customize them. And like I couldn't do any of that, but what I could do is download the programs and tools that they shared, and in them were things like, map editors for Pokemon Red Edition or something. One of the things that I made was Evolution, I called it, where you would start off the Pokemon game with an Eevee. Like you'd pick one of the evolved Eevees, basically. And what's like really funny about it, looking back, is that I never played the Pokemon game. I played it a little bit. I just love the idea of customizing and making your own. If you think about what I do today, like map making, like we just did a moment ago, it kind of makes sense looking back on it that I would do something like that. I was looking for the way to customize and create my own thing. And I guess that was one of the first instances of doing something like that. Anyway, there was some probably some other cool things like back in the old school days of the computer stuff, like 90s computer stuff that I could remember, but not much else comes to mind right now. I just vividly remember using these programs to extract audio from the Command and Conquer games, and I was so excited by it because I was a bit older and I was no longer playing those games, but I would always think, man, the soundtracks are so good, I want to listen to that, and I figured out how to get the audio off of the CDs, which is cool. Oh my god, assuming you should do Pixelmon. To clarify, I'm not really into Pokemon. It was just the thing, like when I was in school, everyone was doing Pokemon. I collected Pokemon cards. I enjoyed playing the Pokemon game with the cards, actually, and I played a little bit on the Game Boy, but I was just like super interested in, you could edit this and make your own one. Like that's what I wanted to do. That's what we did in the early 2000s, says Steve Stater. Yeah, like late 90s, early 2000s, that kind of like online scene was my jam. I loved it. I just can't remember, like, emulators were a thing. When I was a kid, I played this Michael Jackson arcade game called Moonwalker, and it turns out that there's like several different versions of it made for different machines and systems, and it became this like weird, hard to get hold of thing. And then the internet happened, and arcade owners would upload the ROMs, and then you had this emulator thing called MAME, and you could just do it all again. You could play the arcade game. I was on holiday, like in Cyprus or something, as a kid, and I just had this really distinct memory of seeing this arcade game for Michael Jackson's Moonwalker and just being like, what is this? And then playing it and loving it, and then never saw it again. And then years later, I got online and you could get an emulator and get this stuff going again. It was so cool. Elad Jenkins in chat says, MAME, that rocked. You know what? More of it's coming back to me now. So a little bit after, quite a bit after actually, so the Xbox system comes out, right? The original Xbox. And one of the things that's really cool about it is that it has PC architecture, and it doesn't take long for people to like open it up and figure out how to modify it and stuff like that, right? Right, this was when like I think PlayStation 3 was out at this time. The original Xbox, all of a sudden you could buy it really cheap. Like they were just trying to get rid of all the stock. 50 quid, you get it with 2 controllers and loads of games. And one of the games that you could get it with at this price, you could use to soft mod it. So this meant that there was an exploit in the game. If you like went into a certain level and did a save with like this, that, and the other, you could sort of bypass the security feature. And I think the game was called Splinter Cell. Then you would be able to all of a sudden load up custom software. So it was like you got this memory card, you put it in, and then you know you did the thing inside of the game, and then you put in your own disc, and you opened up the console, and you could do whatever you wanted with it. I remember getting this thing that was like it was like MAME, but it also had NES and SNES in it, and it had every NES and SNES game. And like you could just put it on your Xbox and turn it into a media center. It hooked up to my computer so it could use the internet to like do some what would have been very early days for streaming video, like some real kind of like low quality streaming. But it could also grab media from your computer. Oh, Rosh Bamboo Gaming says, I remember modding my PS1 to play Burn games, lol. Yeah, I'm remembering more of this like hackery stuff that we used to do. So our PlayStation 1 got chipped because my dad had a friend who like did all of that. I guess that's probably what like got me interested in it, that someone else did it, and then eventually I was like, well, how do you do this? Because I remember using like a paperclip thing on the PlayStation 2 to like jostle out and open the disk drive without the computer, or sorry, the PlayStation realizing it, and then you could trick it into playing copied games. That was another thing, yeah. Anyway, so the Xbox, you could use it as a media center, and on it was MAME. And I remember now playing the Michael Jackson game on there because it was like, oh yeah, I got that like emulator from years ago. And what I've always done is made backups, so I've still probably got it lying around on like a CD-ROM from like 20 years ago. And anyway, yeah, went and looked it up and ended up being able to use it on the Xbox. And we played old NES games on there and stuff, me and my mates, and we used it to watch movies, and it was just fun to do all that like hackery stuff. Like I wasn't the hacker, you know. It's just downloading other people's software that they shared. Oh, Ubermouse says I used to mod the PSP consoles for a couple of euros for people with a custom battery. Real good time. Yeah, I modded my PSP as well, and I saw it in a drawer the other day. So I've been rummaging around my house, finding things that I want to throw away. I'm probably going to just throw away the PSP. It feels really bad to throw away like a screen that I could potentially use, but here's the thing, I've got a mobile phone, I've got the old mobile phone, and I've done the whole try and hook it up and use it as something extra for productivity, but it doesn't really quite work out. Anyway, it feels horrible to throw away these old things, but I'm going to try and find a way to put it into someone's hands who would use it, is my plan. And so I had a PSP and I modded that as well, but I never really did much with it. I remember I didn't put like any pirated games on it, and I can't really remember why I modded it, but I did the PSP modding as well, probably just because I wanted to see if I could do it. And I also tried to use it as an additional screen for my computer one time, which didn't really work out. So yeah, I've done a little bit of PSP modding. Now, the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, I have no idea if the PlayStation 4 can be modded, but I think the PlayStation 3 was, but it was like 10 years after it had been out and people just weren't interested in it. I think one of the big things about doing that now is that I think Sony and that have kind of caught up to this idea that people still want to be able to play those old games, and so now they've incorporated them into their stores. So you know, you pay for the game twice sometimes when you do, like, you buy one off the store again. So yeah, anyway, you know, that stuff was so much fun to do years ago. I don't think I'd really do it again. Something that reminds me of it is actually Minecraft. Like, over the years, we've seen people try to do stuff like recreate other games inside of Minecraft, and that to me is like an equivalence to doing those things. But I don't see myself ever really doing that again. One of the reasons that I did it way back when is just like not having money to do anything else, right? So now I would rather just, you know, buy a PlayStation and buy a game and play it. Like I can afford that, whereas back then, like you'd have to find other ways to entertain yourself, and I guess learning how to do all this modding stuff was one of them.